Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hizzy Hustle. Another one coming at you today for this tariff, these looming tariffs that we have, and just how it could potentially affect the BC housing market and the rest of Canada over the next year or so. For those of you who don't know, my name is Tyler Heisman. I am a licensed realtor here in the Okanagan with Oakland Realty and the Heisman Group. Just another concerned citizen that's looking to help people navigate this crazy market and potentially this political landscape that we're navigating through at this current moment. So, first things first, just a little bit of a dive as to what's going on in our association here. If we're looking at just numbers, we have 53 new listings over the last 24 hours. One came back onto the market, 18 price decreases, 2 price increases. Not very common nowadays. 12 sold and 10 canceled. So we're definitely having quite a discrepancy here between solds and actives, but we're seeing a lot more actives coming onto the market, which means people might be getting a little bit more confident in where the spring market's going. So good news on the horizon. So today, just going to take a look here. BCREA came out with a economics market intelligence report, which is essentially hiding hell divers there behind. Come on, open up. There we go. The heck? Not very good at this stuff, as you can tell. So I'm just going to match my screen here to there. All right, so market intelligence reports. What do you think is going to be happening? How do you think this is going to affect? If you have any personal opinions, if it differs from what you see here or whatever, I would love to know in the comments. Another thing as well. Please like, follow, subscribe. Really helps grow the channel. We'll be doing this daily content. I'm definitely going to be consistently posting on here, trying to find things to dive into and analyze, and just give another, hopefully, candid take on these types of things without bothering too many people. Essentially, what this is just a breakdown of the possible situations where they think things are going, what things could happen if the tariffs were to be implemented and we don't retaliate, and then if we do retaliate. So all these were taken into account. As you can see, there has been a lot of trade, a lot of impacts that could potentially arise on both sides of the border if something like this were to happen. Summary here is that a tariff on Canadian imports to the United States would have some serious consequence on Canada and BC's economy. 25% tariff would push both Canadian and BC economics into a recession, and impact could potentially compound to a broader trade war and retaliatory tariffs, which is just not a good thing, right? It's just going to compound. Under the most likely scenario, the BC housing market would see a temporary decline in activity, but posting a robust recovery after, unleashing that pent-up demand. And there's two scenarios that could come. If we don't retaliate, our housing market could do another COVID. If we do retaliate, that's going to change things quite a bit, because we're now increasing a lot of the prices on Canadians, not just hurting our export economy. So big picture here, focusing on the implications. So we export during the first 3 quarters of 2024, we exported $800 billion worth of Canadian goods, which translates to 600 billion US goods and services across the border. The relationship is broad-based with energy, durable goods, and services, with many different industries flowing across the border to benefit both economies. And that's kind of the thing that Trump forgets to mention, is that they run a trade surplus with everything, I believe, except for oil and gas, which we provide at a discount. So if you were to break up oil and gas and then the other parts, there would be a deficit. If you put them together, I believe the U.S. is doing quite well. That's not in here. But we can take hopefully look at that at another point. So there's two different scenarios that they're going to lay out here. The ones with tariffs and no retaliation, and then the ones with tariffs and retaliation. So if they were to decide to implement the tariffs, the exchange rate would likely depreciate further due to both outflow of demand away from Canadian exports and widening differential between U.S. and Canadian interest rates as well. So this depreciation of the loonie could offset some of the higher costs of imports, but would pass through to Canadian inflation, which is not a good thing for us because then everything goes up in price. Numbers wise, we don't have to get too much into that because we can just come and take a look down here. So we'll go through. So at this level, so if we were to retaliate with tariffs, the 25%, like they said, Canada would deepen its negative or economic impacts explored in the first scenario, and then it would go even farther because now we're affecting the direct costs to the consumers in Canada. And we imported over $400 billion worth of goods per year, which many of them are raw materials, which we then use to contribute to the North American supply chain. So, you know, we're so interconnected that there's literally no benefit on either side to this. It's not going to work. Like, it's just, there's going to be too much damage. There needs to be so much more infrastructure investment on both sides of the border before this would be seen as a smart decision on either side, whoever were to make the decision first type of thing. But in the situation where you're dealing with an economic downfall, tariffs, trade war, while also trying to create the infrastructure that you would need to survive as a completely sovereign country with lack of trade with the world's superpower, which is essentially why Canada was rich and why we do so well, is because we get to supply the world economic superpower with most of their raw goods and materials to then use for that economy, right? And to generate that massive wealth. So just a few numbers to get into here. I don't want to go too much into the actual report of it, but we have a baseline here in the blue of where our GDP would be going up to quarter four of 2027. If we were to hit with a 10% tariff, you could see that line drop down, a 10% tariff with retaliation, and then this is the 25% tariff and the 25% tariff with retaliation. So we would see a huge drop in GDP just for the first little bit, especially with this retaliation. But the main thing, or the most noticeable thing, would be inflation and interest rates. So this is the one that I found to be a little bit weird, is the Bank of Canada rates. The way that they're currently going right now should steady out just under 2.5%. So like I said, they were going to potentially schedule in another drop or two throughout the year. This is into 2027. So if we're at quarter one of 2025 and they just did an interest rate drop and we're at 3% right now, then they're saying by the end of quarter four, with no tariffs, that we would be expected to see a 2.5. So they're potentially thinking about dropping the interest rate another 0.5% on this year as it is. So if they were to hit us with tariffs and we retaliate, look at that bubble. Interest rates go up immediately. 10% tariffs with retaliation, interest rates go up, or they just stay relatively solid, which is okay. But if we don't respond to tariffs, or we don't get tariffs, this is where we land. But the interesting thing is when we don't retaliate, our interest rates go down. Like to the ground. So what would that be? 0.25? This is essentially signaling a full-blown recession, in my opinion. So, just not good. Inflation will skyrocket with retaliation. Obviously, we're taxing ourselves. There's nothing we can do about that, and I really can't wrap my head around why that would be beneficial to do. There's no data that shows that that would be a good thing for Canadians, and they're not talking about what they would take that money and do with it, because obviously Pierre and a few others have mentioned that not a single dollar of that retaliatory tariff should go to any government administration or anything like that. It should be going directly to the businesses and the people that are affected by these tariffs, and rightfully so. And then exchange rate as well, just the quality of our dollar is just going to plummet if we retaliate. Or if we don't retaliate, it gets worse. But to be honest with you, like, I don't know. That one's a hard one to read. I'm not too privy, I guess, on this information. Like, I'm not an economist, so I can't tell you why these numbers are the way they are. I'm just kind of here to relay them. But yeah, all in all, a trade war is going to affect us so negatively, and in many different situations, it's going to affect us. There's no benefits. There's no benefits from it. At least if we were to not retaliate, people could see interest rates drop and potentially seek opportunity in other ways, right? Obviously, the government would push people to start borrowing money and to kind of stimulate the economy and hope that things would change. Maybe give some people some type of subsidies to allow new businesses to get started and stuff like that. But it's going to be a tough time. For BC in particular, our provincial GDP would suffer. I don't think it would suffer nearly as much as Canada as a whole, just because our exports aren't nearly as plentiful here. But so with 25% tariff with retaliation, and then the BC Finance Ministry. So BCREA is saying that with the 25% tariff, no retaliation, in the first year, 2025, we'd see a 0.75% drop to our GDP, and the following year, we'd see it grow back just over. And then the same for retaliatory, just worse. And then BC Finance Ministry is just saying 25% tariff will do this. So, our model estimates that 25% tariff would cause a 0.75% to 1.1% contraction of BC's real GDP in the first year of the tariff, and followed by a slow but positive growth in the next year. Nonetheless, these tariffs would damage provincial GDP, as many BC experts to appear to be fairly easy for U.S. firms to substitute away from the classic or the favor of domestic producers. Accordingly, a move away from British Columbian goods drastically worsens our investment and employment environment. We saw this exact scenario play out in BC forestry sector following the imposition of 20% U.S. tariff on softwood lumber. That tariff prompted a dramatic decline in lumber exports and the production of manufactured wood products and forestry industry. So, and we noticed that too. Like, price has gone up quite a bit here. So implications of the tariffs on the BC housing market. It's a broad spectrum, but with regards to the economy, tariffs will have an unambiguous negative impact on the economic growth in BC at a 25% level that could push the economy into a recession. As we have seen in the previous recessions, the usual pattern is that the BC housing market is an immediate decline in housing activity and then a robust recovery as the central banks lower the rates to stimulate the economy. However, the effect on inflation caused by the potential Canadian retaliation and the bank's ability to lower interest rates short circuit the normal problem pattern, which if we see these retaliations, we could see interest rates go up, and then that would essentially negate all that, because Canada's a huge portion of our GDP is our housing market. So if that tanks, then it tanks with it. And then here are the BC specific housing market scenarios. So same as before, baseline 10% tariff with retaliation, 25% tariff, and 25% tariff with retaliation. So average home prices are expected to, at the end of Q1 2025, we're expected them to come down a little bit, but stabilize, and potentially everywhere ends up being relatively okay by 2028. But we're looking at the short term, and if those tariffs hit, and those tariffs hit with retaliations, it's going to be bad for a while. Whereas if they just hit us with tariffs and the rates start to drop, then this is going to be a big spike in activity. Same with active listings. Average home price will drop with a steady incline, but all this is pretty okay, in my opinion. The damage is already done. I think our housing market's already been completely nuked ever since COVID in the first place. So, there's only so much we can do. And then 5-year fixed rates, expect them to go up if the economy gets worse, right? Not going to be able to sell those bonds, especially with our dollar tanking. So, conclusion: there is a specter of tariff looms large over the intertwined economies of the U.S. and Canada, threatening not only our economic stability, but both nations and also the livelihoods of ordinary citizens, and the vitality of essential industries. So, all in all, not a good thing. No bueno. We don't want this to happen. We want both sides of the border to get along and to make both sides prosperous, right? It's no benefit to them, and it's no benefit to us. So North America has the ability to be the best landmass in the entire world, and we have been for such a long time. I think there is a massive shift in the political landscape of the States and Canada, and this pushback is kind of the result of that. So, there's the analogy is the pendulum will always swing back, and it will always swing back to the force in which it was pushed outwards, right? Like, if they wanted to push back even harder, then the next time around, it's going to push even harder the next way. So, we need to take this opportunity to kind of situate ourselves back into the middle, and hopefully we can move forward with a more prosperous union between our two countries, because the fall of a empire, it's inevitable. It will always happen. The US is the current world's empire, and I don't know if they'll be able to stay there for eternity, but history is destined to repeat itself. So who knows what can happen. But to lean on the States as heavily as we are, we're feeling the consequences of that. So there's definitely some stuff to take into consideration. Breaking down the interprovincial trade barriers would definitely help with that. So this is something I wanted to touch on. Probably not the best coverage or whatever. This was done by Chief Economist with BCREA, Brendan Augmundson. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Great guy. Here's his LinkedIn profile. Chief Economist here for BCREA. He's got a good sense of humor. He really delivers the stuff in a good way. Like here he is. Oh boy, can't wait to do this again in March, talking about tariffs. Oh boy, can't wait. Here I am saying I feel this on a spiritual level. Yeah, I've had a chance to chat with Brendan and see him speak a few times, and yeah, no, he's awesome. So yeah, thank you again for the information, and that's that. But yeah, so if you haven't already, hit that notification bell. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos and clips. Yeah, thanks again for tuning in to anybody who does, and we'll catch you on the